I never wanted to return to the ocean. I told myself that the last dive would be the last. That I'd seen enough, done enough. That I'd swallowed enough salt water in my nightmares to last me a lifetime. But when the call came, when they told me about the anomaly, I found myself signing the contract before the rational part of my mind could protest. This was different. Something impossible had been found in the depths, deeper than any natural structure had a right to exist. A formation that should not be there. And now, I was here, listening to the hum of the submersible as it carried us into the abyss. Descent at 6,000 meters, came the voice of our pilot, Reyes. Calm, measured, professional, pressure holding, all systems green. I exhaled through my teeth, watching the monitors flicker with real-time telemetry. The Argos was cutting through the darkness, deeper than even the wreck of the Titanic. Outside the viewport, there was nothing but a world of black water, disturbed only by the occasional flickering of bioluminescent life. Alien creatures, evolved to thrive where no light had ever touched. I adjusted my harness, glancing at the others. Reyes kept her eyes on the controls, hands steady. Next to her, Jennings, a geophysicist with more dives under his belt than any of us, was staring at the sonar display like he expected it to blink out of existence. But it was Harlow who looked the most uneasy. She sat stiffly in her seat, arms folded, her expression locked in something between concentration and dread. "You okay?" I asked. She blinked, as if snapping out of a thought. "Yeah, just something's off. This doesn't make sense." "The anomaly?" She nodded, eyes flicking to the monitor. "Solid mass and impossible depth. Carbon dating doesn't match anything on record. And She hesitated, pressing her lips together. "The signal." I felt a cold prickle at the back of my neck. "What about it?" "It's still transmitting," she said. A silence settled over the cabin. For weeks, our satellites have been picking up a strange, rhythmic pulse from the depths. At first, they thought it was seismic activity, until someone realized that the pattern wasn't random. It was structured, intentional, like a beacon. But there shouldn't be anything down here capable of broadcasting at that frequency. And yet, the deeper we went, the stronger it became. The submarine vibrated as the currents shifted. Outside, the void yawned wider, swallowing us whole. The thought struck me, unbidden, we are trespassing. 2 minutes to sight, Reyes announced. I exhaled, forcing the tension from my muscles. I've been on dozens of deep-sea expeditions. I'd seen things that would make most people refuse to step foot on a boat again. Wrecks sealed in time, lost cities swallowed by the tides. Hell, even the bones of creatures that didn't exist in any historical record. But this was different. A proximity alert sounded. "Contact," Jennings muttered, leaning forward. His breath fogged the glass. "Jesus." My stomach tightened as I followed his gaze. There, emerging from the endless darkness, was the pyramid. It loomed like a submerged monolith, its surface untouched by erosion, as if it had been placed here yesterday, rather than eons ago. Smooth, unnatural angles cut through the water, standing in direct defiance of the chaotic formations of the deep. And the carvings, God, the carvings. Even through the murk, I could see them. Strange, interwoven patterns covered every inch of the structure, pulsating with an almost organic symmetry. The signal grew stronger. "This," Harlow swallowed. "This shouldn't exist." No one disagreed. Reyes guided the Argos closer, bathing the pyramid in the glow of our floodlights. The inscriptions seemed to move under the light, shadows shifting in ways that didn't quite match the laws of physics. Running a surface scan, Jennings muttered, fingers flying over his console. I stared at the carvings, an uneasy weight settling in my chest. The patterns felt familiar, but in a way that was just out of reach, like something glimpsed in a half-remembered dream. Something primal. Jennings cursed under his breath. "That can't be right." "What is it?" Reyes asked. He hesitated. "There's air inside." I frowned. "At this depth?" "Yeah, and it's not just a pocket. It's pressurized, like a controlled environment." No one spoke. There were no life signs. No signs of recent disturbance. And yet, somehow, the structure had been preserved perfectly, its interior still intact after God knows how many years beneath the ocean. Then the door opened. We didn't touch anything, didn't send a signal, didn't even approach close enough to trigger movement. But right in front of us, a section of the pyramid's base shifted, stone grinding against stone as an entrance yawned open. A black void beyond the black water. A silent invitation. No one moved. Finally, Reyes let out a breath. I think we just got our next step. We stepped onto the pyramid's surface in full pressurized suits, exoskeletons compensating for the crushing weight of the deep. Our boots made soft thuds against the stone, a sound that felt wrong in the silent abyss. The carvings were more intricate up close, shifting as we moved, patterns realigning, changing, as if reacting to our presence. "This is insane," Jennings whispered. "It's intact, like it was just placed here." I ran my gloved hand along the stone. It was warm, too warm. The entrance loomed before us. A black, yawning void, untouched by silt or time. I glanced at the others. No one wanted to be the first to step inside, but we were here for a reason. I activated my helmet light and took the first step. The moment I crossed the threshold, the sound changed. The constant hum of the ocean, the distant creaks of the submersible, all of it vanished, replaced by silence, a perfect, unnatural silence. The others followed, their footsteps muffled. The corridor stretched before us, impossibly smooth, leading deeper into the unknown. Our lights cast long shadows against the walls, and for the first time, I saw the murals. They weren't just patterns. They were stories. Humanoid figures, kneeling before something massive, something with too many limbs, too many eyes. A presence, towering over them, shifting between forms that hurt to look at. The further we walked, the more the figures changed from human to something else. "This isn't right," Harlow whispered. These carvings." Then she stopped. We all did, because ahead of us, floating just inches off the ground, was a helmet. It wasn't ours. The glass was cracked. A name was etched on the side, the letters worn away by time. But the most chilling part? The comms unit was still transmitting. A soft, rhythmic sound, like breathing. And then, from the darkness beyond, something breathed back. Silence settled over us like a weighted shroud. No one spoke. No one moved. The helmet hovered in the waterless air, suspended like a relic of something that should have been buried and forgotten. The breathing continued. Slow, shallow. Then it stopped. A click echoed through our comms. I gripped my rifle tighter, my pulse hammering in my skull. My brain scrambled for an explanation, but none made sense. There was no transmission source, no atmospheric conditions to carry sound. And yet, someone had just exhaled into our ears. Reyes was the first to move. She raised the scanner, her fingers shaking only slightly as she ran a spectral analysis over the helmet. The screen flickered, data streaming in strange, erratic bursts. "No biological matter detected," she muttered. "Then what's transmitting?" Jennings whispered. A crackle of static slithered through the channel. "Then, you should not have come." The voice wasn't ours. It wasn't human. Jennings stumbled back, his breath coming in ragged gasps. "Tell me that was one of you." No one answered. The corridor stretched ahead, swallowing our lights in a thick, unnatural blackness. The walls pulsed faintly, the carvings shifting like something breathing beneath the stone. Harlow stepped forward, ignoring the helmet, her gaze locked on the murals. "This isn't just art," she murmured. "It's a record." I swallowed hard, following her gaze. The carvings changed the deeper we went. The first murals had shown humans, primitive, kneeling, worshipping. But the further we moved inside, the figures twisted, elongated, their faces contorted in agony, eyes hollowing into empty sockets. The last mural showed no humans at all, just shadows, figures blurred at the edges, faces stretched into silent screams. In the center of the composition loomed a massive, inhuman silhouette, a shape that defied anatomy, limbs that bent in unnatural ways, too many joints, too many fingers. Its eyes weren't carved into the stone. They were gouged out, as if even the artists had been too afraid to give it form. A chill ran through me. "This place isn't a tomb," Harlow whispered. "It's a warning." Reyes exhaled through her nose, glancing at me. So what the hell was outside? The pyramid had been untouched by time, its stone untouched by the pressure of the deep. No sediment, no erosion. It had been placed here, perfectly preserved. And that meant the outside wasn't real. The air inside shifted, the weight of something unseen pressing against my skull. The sensation was subtle at first, like standing in a room where someone had just left, their presence still lingering. But it grew stronger the further we walked. Reyes checked her watch, then frowned. "What?" I asked. She tapped the display. "This isn't possible. We've been inside for 5 minutes." Jennings turned. "So?" Her jaw tightened. "Then why does my clock say 20? A cold prickle ran down my spine. Harlow checked her own watch, then let out a slow breath. "She's right." The realization hit me like a gut punch. Time was wrong in here. The pyramid didn't follow our rules, and we had no idea how long we'd actually been inside. I opened my mouth to suggest turning back when the air shifted again. A whisper, so faint it barely registered. Then, the lights flickered, not just the helmet lamps. The air itself dimmed, like a dying pulse, and something moved at the end of the corridor. I froze. The others did too. The darkness at the far end of the hallway wasn't just an absence of light. It was a presence, writhing like liquid shadow, and it was getting closer. The whisper turned into a chorus. Soft, broken voices, overlapping and distorted. Jennings took a step back. "We need to go. Now." No one argued. We turned, moving fast. Too fast. Our boots struck the stone, our breathing harsh in our helmets. The whispering didn't fade. It followed, curling around us like smoke. The corridor seemed longer than before. The entrance, where was it? I swore we hadn't gone this deep. The layout was shifting. Panic surged in my chest. "Reyes, how far?" She didn't answer. I turned and nearly screamed. Reyes stood frozen, her helmet light flickering, her body stiff. Her head was tilted, like she was listening to something only she could hear. Her lips moved. No sound came out. Jennings grabbed her arm. "Reyes." She turned to look at him, and I swear to God, for a split second, her face wasn't her own. The features blurred, her eyes sinking into empty pits, her mouth stretching too wide. Then she blinked, and she was Reyes again. The whispering stopped. No one spoke. She exhaled sharply, shaking herself like she was waking from a trance. What just happened?" Harlow swallowed. "You stopped." Reyes looked at us, then at the hallway behind us. "I don't remember." Jennings checked his scanner. "Electromagnetic interference is spiking. We need to move." We ran. The entrance was close. I could see it now, just ahead, the yawning doorway we had entered through. I pushed forward, reaching for the threshold. But the moment I crossed it, something changed. The sound rushed back in. The ocean, the currents, the familiar hum of the deep. We had made it. I turned back and froze. The pyramid's entrance was gone. Not closed, not hidden, just gone. Smooth, unbroken stone stretched before me. No doorway, no seams, nothing to suggest an opening had ever existed. Harlow reached out, pressing a hand to the surface. "It's sealed." Reyes turned back to the submersible, her breathing uneven. "Let's just get the hell out of here." No one argued. One by one, we climbed back into the Argos, sealing the hatch behind us. The familiar hum of the systems booting up was almost comforting. Almost. Jennings collapsed into his chair, running a hand through his hair. "I don't know what the hell just happened, but I vote we don't ever talk about it." No one laughed. Reyes took the controls, guiding us away from the pyramid. The structure shrank in the viewport, its impossible angles fading into the deep. The relief was short-lived, because then the radio crackled. At first, it was static, a low, grating hiss. Then, a voice, faint, distorted, but unmistakable. "Reyes." She stiffened, eyes snapping to the comms. "Reyes, why did you leave me?" The blood drained from my face. Jennings shook his head. No, that's not. You were supposed to stay." The voice was wrong, familiar, but warped, as if stretched over something that barely understood how to use human speech. Come back. And then, beneath the static, something breathed. Slow, deep, like it was right next to us. Reyes slammed the comm switch, cutting the transmission. The hiss died. No one spoke. The Argos continued its ascent. And beneath us, in the blackness of the ocean, the pyramid waited. Something was wrong with the water. It moved differently, thicker, heavier, like the ocean itself was pressing in on us. The Argos' ascent should have felt like a relief, a slow climb toward the familiar world above. But the deeper we rose, the more I felt it, an invisible weight dragging at the edges of my perception. Reyes kept her hands tight on the controls, her face locked in forced concentration. Jennings had gone silent, his knuckles white as he stared at the sonar display. Harlow broke the silence first. We left it behind. Her voice was flat. No one answered. It wasn't just the transmission that haunted us. It was the way the entrance had vanished, the way time had warped inside, the way Reyes had changed for that brief moment, her face distorting into something that had no right to exist. We were out now. We were leaving, but it felt like something had come with us. Jennings suddenly let out a sharp breath, jabbing at the sonar. Tell me I'm crazy. I leaned over his shoulder. The screen pulsed with static interference, the depth readings fluctuating wildly. But behind the noise, there was something else. Movement. Not from us. It was beneath the sub. Reyes gripped the controls. Tell me it's a thermal distortion. Jennings swallowed. It's not. I stared at the display, my pulse a hammer in my throat. It was subtle, just a flicker at the edges, something too deep for our instruments to fully process. But it was there, a presence, and it was rising. The comms crackled. No voices this time. No whispers. Just breathing. A slow, deep inhale, impossibly vast, as if the entire ocean was drawing breath. The lights flickered. The instruments dimmed, and for a brief, terrible second I saw it. Not on the screen. Not outside the viewport. Inside my head. A shape. Formless, yet infinite. A vast and shifting something that defied physics, defied thought. It wasn't a creature. It wasn't a being. It was an absence, a wound in reality itself, stretching long, grasping fingers toward the edges of perception. Then it was gone. The lights stabilized. The instruments flickered back. But we had all seen something. Rhea's breath was ragged. Ascend faster. The engines whined as the Argos pushed upward. The seconds stretched like hours. Then the comms sputtered back to life. A voice. It sees you. The words slithered through my headset. The others heard it too. I saw it in their faces, the way Jennings flinched, the way Harlow clenched her jaw so hard I thought her teeth might crack. Then, without warning, the power died. Darkness swallowed us whole. I could hear my own breathing, fast and shallow in my helmet. The emergency lights flickered on, casting dim, crimson glows across the cabin. The sub drifted, caught in the silent pull of the abyss. Reyes slammed buttons on the console. Come on, come on. Nothing responded. Jennings checked his instruments. This doesn't make sense. The batteries are fine, but there's no output. A whisper curled through the cabin. We all heard it, not through the comms. It was inside the sub. I turned my head, slowly, painfully. The sound came from the rear hatch. The airlock. No one moved. The whispering continued, hushed, layered, voices speaking over each other in a language that scraped against my mind like broken glass. Then, something knocked. Soft. Once. Twice. A deliberate rhythm, like the cadence of some forgotten ritual. I raised my rifle. It felt useless. Jennings' breath hitched. No one touched the hatch, right? No one answered. Then came a third knock. Slow. Deliberate. Reyes gritted her teeth. Screw this. She reached for the emergency override, forcing the restart sequence manually. A groan shuddered through the sub, deep and unnatural, like something alive in the metal itself. Jennings cursed. We need to. The power surged back on. The screens flickered. The lights flared. The engines roared to life, stabilizing the vessel. The whispering stopped. The knocking stopped. For a brief, fragile moment, All we heard was the hum of the systems, the steady beep of telemetry data. Then Harlow let out a slow, shaking breath. And I saw it. On the screen, the sonar feed had returned. The anomaly was gone. Not moving. Not descending. Just gone. I should have felt relieved. I didn't. Jennings forced a laugh, breathless and sharp. We're good. We're clear. No one echoed him. Reyes pushed the sub forward. Faster now. Her fingers steady but tense on the controls. Let's just get home. No one argued. I kept my eyes on the screen, watching the empty void beneath us, waiting for something, anything, to move again. It didn't. But deep in my gut, I knew. This wasn't over. Not yet. We had left the pyramid. But something had noticed us, and I didn't think it would forget. The surface was in sight. The darkness thinned, giving way to the ghostly glow of refracted moonlight shimmering far above. The water around us turned from black to an eerie, deep blue. We were almost there. No one spoke. No one celebrated. Reyes guided the Argos into its final ascent, her hands rigid on the controls. Jennings clutched his tablet, watching the data stream with the silent desperation of a man praying for consistency. Harlow sat stiffly, her eyes locked on the viewport as if expecting the abyss to reach up and drag us back down. We had made it. So why did it feel like we hadn't escaped? The silence stretched thin, thick with tension neither of us dared acknowledge. It was an unspoken truth, a fear none of us were brave enough to put into words. We had left the pyramid, but something had seen us, and I could still feel it, like an invisible thread, a tether wrapped around my ribs, pulling tight. The comms crackled. I flinched. The others did too. At first, it was nothing but static, a low, distorted hiss that fuzzed through the speakers like a half-forgotten memory. Then, a voice, broken, distant, layered over itself in whispers and echoes. Where are you going? Reyes' breath hitched. God damn it. She flipped the switch, cutting the feed. We're ignoring it. Jennings swallowed. We heard it, right? That wasn't. No one answers, Reyes said sharply. No one argued. The Argos surged upward, but I couldn't stop myself from glancing at the rear camera feed. I shouldn't have, because something was down there. The pyramid was gone. The blackness below had swallowed a hole, erased it from existence like it had never been. But the absence was still there. A void in the ocean, a space where reality had bent inward, and something moved inside it. Not a shape, not a creature, just an outline, a shadow that did not belong. It didn't chase. It didn't rise, but it watched. I tore my gaze away. We weren't meant to see it. We weren't meant to leave. The pressure outside shifted. The surface loomed closer. Reyes' fingers tightened on the controls. Almost there, she murmured. Then, as we breached the final 100 meters, the ocean stopped moving. Not slowed. Stopped. The currents vanished. The gentle rise and fall of the waters ceased, as if we had entered a space where the laws of physics no longer applied. The instruments scrambled. Depth readings flickered. The external temperature plummeted. The surface was right there, but we weren't getting closer. Jennings checked his display. His hand shook. We're stuck. Reyes forced the throttle forward. The engines whined in protest, straining, grinding against something invisible. No. The sonar flared. A new reading, directly above us. The water around the sub trembled. Something massive shifted in the deep. And then, for the first time, I truly understood. The pyramid had not been the danger. It had been a prison, and we had opened the door. The water rippled, though there was no current. The sonar blared again, but the readings made no sense. A shifting, fluctuating mass, something neither liquid nor solid, neither near nor far. And then I saw it, outside the viewport. A distortion, not a shape, not an object, just an absence, a piece of the ocean where space itself had folded wrong. It wasn't looking at us. It wasn't facing us. And yet, I knew, with every fiber of my being, it saw. The comms crackled back to life. A whisper, not one voice. All of them. All the voices from the pyramid. All the ones we had heard, layered, speaking in unison. You should not have left. The lights flickered. The sub groaned. I felt it wrap around us. Pressure that wasn't pressure, a gravity that didn't pull, only held. Jennings screamed. I turned, my breath catching. He was melting. Not his body, his outline, his shape. His form unraveled at the edges, twisting into something that flickered between dimensions, stretching and compressing like a glitch in reality itself. His eyes went last. A blink, a flicker, then just gone. His suit crumpled empty into his seat. Reyes slammed every control at once. Hold on. The engines roared. The sub lurched forward. The force snapped through my skull, sending me into the console. Stars burst behind my eyes. And then, we broke the surface. The ocean vanished beneath us. For a moment, there was only the violent pull of gravity as the sub breached the waterline. Rain lashed against the hull. The radio howled with emergency frequencies. The sky was a swirling, chaotic storm, and the pressure was gone. Whatever had held us had let go. Reyes gasped for breath. Status? What's our status? I forced myself upright. Harlow was shaking. Jennings' seat was empty. We were back, but something was wrong. The storm raged around us, unnatural, violent. The constellations above were wrong, not slightly shifted, not distorted by the atmosphere. Completely different. Reyes noticed it first. She looked up, blinking hard, as if she refused to believe it. This isn't right. The comms flared. Not static this time. A clear transmission. Unidentified vessel. State your call sign. A voice. Human. I exhaled sharply. Reaching for the mic, this is the Argos. Research vessel Argos. I swallowed. We encountered interference. Silence. Then, research vessel Argos went missing 75 years ago. The words were nails down my spine. Reyes' breath hitched. No, that's no we. The radio cut out. A new voice took its place. Not from the comms. From the water. Soft. Gentle. You left the door open. The ocean shifted, and something rose from the depths. A shadow against the storm. A shape I couldn't comprehend, not with my eyes, not with my mind. It wasn't chasing us. It wasn't attacking us. It was leaving. We had set it free. And I knew, deep in the marrow of my bones, that the world we had returned to would never be the same again. We had been warned. We hadn't listened. And now, it walked among us.